My name's Stephen Hill. I'm CTO here at CommuniCloud, and I'd really like to thank you all for taking time out this morning and welcome you to our webinar around cloud calling and the future of communication.
Apologies for my end, people calling me. I'll put that on mute, Stephen.
We're very excited to share this webinar with you today and to be working alongside our partner Cisco. But before we start, I really want to cover a few housekeeping topics. First one is at the end of the webinar, we'll be closing out with a brief Q&A session. Throughout this, if you've got any questions, please feel free to throw them in that chat box at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of the webinar, we'll try our best to answer them or at least follow them up with you. The other part is we're also going to be recording this video and sharing it with you after the webinar as well. So please feel free to share it with your colleagues or anyone else who you think is going to get some use out of it. Without further ado, I will hand over to Maarten Rooij, our collaboration specialist at Cisco, and he's going to share the presentation that we're about to go through.
Cool. Thanks, Stephen. So my name is Maarten Rooij. I work as a collaboration specialist at Cisco. Some of you might know me, and especially in the last year and a half, I've actually moved into the cloud and hosted telephony team, which is basically the old team of Broadsoft, the company that we acquired about 3 years ago, and then since then have fully integrated into our Webex Cloud portfolio. So what I'll do today is I'll probably present a few slides just to frame what Webex calling is and what our strategy is and what are we trying to address and what it looks like. And then afterwards, I'll hand over to Stephen for a few slides around some of the PSTN connectivity options. And then afterwards, I'll just do a demo. And the demo will be all around Webex calling, how does it integrate with Microsoft, for example, and also what does it look like to manage a platform like this in the Webex Control Hub. And then afterwards, we'll have some Q&A, and that'll be it. So without further going into any details, I'll just start sharing my slides. Q&A, let's keep it for the end so I can move through the slides and we'll address any questions at the end. Let's go into presentation mode here. So before I dive into Webex calling, I think it's probably got to explain a little bit further what the overall Webex portfolio consists of and how Webex calling is a part of that. Some of you might know Webex meetings or Webex events. We're actually using Webex events at the moment. Webex events is the platform that allows you to have thousands of attendees, do registrations, polling, and all sorts of things that really help you to have webinars or large events. We also have Webex meetings. Webex meetings has caught up a lot in the last year, especially during the push of COVID and people working from home or remotely, and also some of the pressure that we had obviously from the competition like Zoom and Microsoft and others. The other portfolio products that we have are obviously our video devices, Webex devices. And you can see that in the top right corner, we've just released a few new devices. This is actually one of them, a really 4K camera mountable on any kind of screen, which is absolutely a great addition to the portfolio. But we obviously have devices that scale up all the way to the boardroom. We also have Webex Calling, which is the technology that I'll be talking about today, and then there's Webex Contact Center. Webex Contact Center is also part of the acquisition of Broadsoft that we did 3 years ago. Now, together, all these technologies form our cloud collaboration portfolio. So we've got meetings or team collaboration. We've got devices that are connected to those users that use Webex as an app. And we also have calling and contact center. Okay. Now, today I will be focusing on the bottom left, which is really the Webex calling platform. Before we go into that, really quickly highlighting some of the main drivers that our customers see to move from an on-prem PBX or key telephony system to a cloud-based telephony system. This is according to Gartner. The PBX has reached its end of life, especially traditional analog PBXs. There's still quite a few out there, but we see a massive shift, obviously, towards an IP PBX or ultimately to a cloud deployment as well, and that's what we'll be talking about today. I think especially the move from copper to SIP has driven a lot of these refreshes for our customers across SMB, public sector, or enterprise. Another one, which is a big driver to move to a cloud calling environment, is just the drive towards a digital workplace. A traditional PBX is not really part of a digital workplace very often. It's a standalone solution. Cloud-driven PBXs fully integrate a lot better with video devices, meeting room solutions, team collaboration, and ultimately delivers a much better and more modern workflow to the end user that really delivers productivity to the end user and a much more enjoyable experience as well, whether it's on the mobile, on the desktop, working from home. So we see a massive drive, especially during the COVID period, for a move to a digital workplace and therefore also cloud telephony. Now, a third one, which is a big one, is a lot of companies just have a corporate initiative or a strategy to purchase things as a cloud solution where possible. And then the last one is interesting, whereas in the past, our technologies, on-prem technologies, whether it's a Avaya or it was Alcatel or it was Cisco's Call Manager, they were very feature-rich, robust PBXs. But unfortunately, customers need to do upgrades to get the latest technology and the latest feature set. And very often that was a set and forget for a few years. And that means that in that window, you tend to, not get the latest technology or the latest innovation. Nowadays, with cloud delivery or cloud innovation, it's instant. We come out with new features every day, every week, every month, and therefore we can really deliver the latest and greatest to our customers to give them the best experience or the best outcome. Okay, so these are all very valid reasons, and we've seen a massive transition towards the cloud, and we see obviously our competitors doing quite well, like RingCentral and Microsoft and Zoom. But I think we've got some really key differentiators that I'll be talking about in a minute as well. So just to take a step back, I mentioned before the traditional PBXs and UC Manager. Where is Cisco coming from and what is Webex Calling? So just to quickly recap that, traditionally Cisco has been playing in that IP PBX Unified Communications Manager space for the last I think it's more than 20 years. I think we purchased Celsius, the company that invented it in 97, and then we took out release 3 or 2 of Call Manager. That was all about an on-prem PBX. It wasn't a standardized server, and later our Cisco servers as well, our UCS servers, but it was still running in the customer's premises or hosted by one of our partners or managed by one of our partners. About 10 years ago, that communications manager moved into some of the data centers of some of our service providers, and they sold it as a hosted collaboration solution, which was almost a UCaaS or a unified communications as a service solution, but it's still running in a service provider's data center and not so much in Cisco's data center. We wanted to have a full, true unified communications as a service in the cloud, in our cloud, and we started building it, but it was actually quite hard to scale globally. Different regulatory issues in different countries. The US is very different than EMEA or Asia Pacific. So we actually decided that developing that platform was way too hard, had a lot of challenges, and we decided to buy our biggest competitor, which was BroadSoft. And BroadSoft actually had about 45% of the global unified communications market, and especially through service providers like Telstra, or BT or Deutsche Telekom or AT&T with the BroadWorks platform that still runs in the data centers of our service providers, and Telstra Tippit, Telstra IP telephony. Telephony is a great example of that, but it is considered as a unified communication solution as well. Now, the other platform that we acquired was actually Cisco BroadCloud, which is not running in the data center of the service provider, but still running in Cisco's data center. It's based on the same software as BroadWorks, so it's really 20 years of development from a BroadSoft perspective, but it runs in Cisco's data center, and therefore we are much more flexible how we integrate with third-party vendors. we come out with the latest and greatest technology and new innovation every single time. Whereas, BroadWorks relies on productization of service providers and the integrations that they do from a carrier perspective. So BroadCloud is really the platform that's agile, it's quick, it's fast, it integrates a lot better, and it also integrates a lot quicker and better with our own Webex portfolio and our endpoints and so forth. Now, that's the platform that Webex Calling is based on. The only thing we did is we rebranded it to Webex Calling because, it's part of the Webex Cloud portfolio. And we now sell it not only through service providers, but we actually sell it through any kind of value-added reseller that's signed up and registered as a partner and has done the training and build up the expertise. So value-added resellers, service providers still, but also system integrators. So we're really tapping into the historical classic Cisco channel of partners that can then deliver value add to that cloud solution as well. So that's really the portfolio. We're really excited, and we've launched Webex Calling about 2 years ago, and we've had some tremendous success across SMB, public sector, and enterprise as well with the platform. So what is Webex Calling? And why is it different from RingCentral? Why is it different from Zoom? And why is it different from Microsoft 8x8? And you've probably heard some of these brands. Again, it's not a platform that's new. It's not 2 years, 3 years old. It is based on technology that's been in development for the last 20 years by BroadSoft. Okay, it's got 30 million plus users already on the BroadWorks platform combined with BroadCloud. Optus Loop has 30,000 ends, I think, here, for example, as an SMB kind of platform as well. So combined globally, it's more than 30 million users on that platform. It is robust, it's carrier grade, it's feature rich, it's geo-redundant, Melbourne and Sydney data centers, it's enterprise ready. Okay, so it's really a platform that allows you to scale from a smaller organization or just a small first footprint on one site, for example, to a much broader and much larger deployment. I think we've got customers in the US, for example, that have 50,000 users on the platform as well. It's also a platform that delivers an end-to-end collaboration experience, not just a single calling technology, but it's fully integrated with our meetings portfolio, team collaboration portfolio, our devices, right? Video endpoints, phones, but also headsets. And that delivers ultimately a very consistent and seamless experience for the end user that drives adoption. And adoption means obviously a return on that investment for you as a business. The other beauty, I think, is that everything is being managed from a single pane of glass, which is the Webex Control Hub. Now, the Webex Control Hub allows you to manage users, the collaboration workloads, devices, and again, devices not just limited to phones, but also video endpoints and headsets. We even manage Jabra headsets in there as well, so third-party devices. Auto attendant, call queues, you name it, hunt groups, reception console, everything is in there, analytics, diagnostics, but I'll show you the platform in a minute as well. But that's really the strength of the platform of the Control Hub. Everything is being managed from there, even integrations with third-party vendors like Microsoft and Google. And then lastly, everything is supported by Cisco TAC, which is renowned in the industry for its support and being one of the best organizations from a technical support perspective. Then really quickly, the Control Hub, I mentioned this before, everything is managed from that single pane of glass, and we keep putting new innovation in that platform as well, but it really allows you to go in there and manage it either yourself or let a Cisco partner manage it on your behalf, or put a demarcation, whatever works for you. The app that we use is the Webex app. The Webex app is available on any kind of operating system, any kind of device. So it could be mobile, it could be on the desktop, whether it's Mac or Windows. And you can pick and choose what workload is available or needs to be available to the end user. Is it just calling? We're using it as a soft phone. That can be done. If you also want Webex meetings, then that workload becomes available in that app as well in the user interface. If you also want messaging and file sharing and integration with other document management services, for example, whether it's OneDrive or it's SharePoint or it's Box or Dropbox or Google Drive, where you have integrations natively within the Webex app with all those document sharing platforms as well. We also fully integrate with our video devices. So joining meetings, making calls can be done from the app, but the unit is actually joining those meetings or is actually making those calls as well. Okay, you can turn off workloads. So if a certain workload is not relevant to you because you've used a different vendor for that specific workload, you're able to turn that off as well. So that makes it really flexible and it really allows you as an administration or IT organization to either turn things off per user or per whole organization or per departments or entities in your business. Now, we understand that a lot of our customers, especially during COVID, have had seen a massive adoption of Microsoft. Microsoft is great at their productivity suite, Outlook, Office, SharePoint, OneDrive, you name it. But Cisco is really, really good at real-time communications, especially contact center, video rooms, voice, like we're covering here, but also meetings. Now, there's an overlap. We get that. So if your customer or if you are adamant to use Microsoft Teams for messaging and file sharing, but you really like Webex calling in our devices and potentially contact center, you can put the demarcation where you want between those different workloads. We fully integrate from Microsoft natively using the same APIs that they tend to use as well. Okay, so if the demarcation is messaging with and file sharing with Microsoft Teams, fair enough, we can then do a full integration with our platform, our phone platform, or our meetings platform into Microsoft as well. So how does that look like, for example, if you want to use Microsoft Teams and Cisco Calling? We can fully integrate with Webex Calling into Microsoft Teams, click the call out of sight of Microsoft Teams. It even integrates with our IP phones. There's no further licensing required. It's out of the box, it's available. It's a very simple integration on the desktop app level, so there's no further architectural changes or things you have to put in place, and it also supports our contact center solutions as well, and I'll show this to you in a minute. Another key differentiator, I think, is really our devices, and this is something that some of our competitors don't do. They rely on poly, or they rely on audio codes, or some of our Chinese manufacturer competitors that are out there as well, like Yealink. Cisco has you covered with all the devices. So whether it's the phones, and we've got cheap phones, we've got beautiful video phones, we've got decked phones, we've got Wi-Fi phones, we've got all the headsets, Bluetooth, wired, we've got our video endpoints, conference phones, you name it, right? But the beauty is they're all connected to the same platform. They get there for a lot richer feature set than any other standard SIP video endpoint or device will get. And they can be controlled, quality, diagnostics, and so forth can be done from the Control Hub as well. And the deployment is a breeze in the way you deploy this too. Then really quickly, how does this connect to the PSTN? To get your public switch telephony connectivity, if you want to make calls outside of your own organization to a mobile or a national landline or international, there's a couple of ways. You can either purchase it through one of our service provider partners, and they'll bundle their carriage and they'll bundle their PSTN services with it. In the case here of CommuniCloud, for example, you can either put a local gateway, which is a Cisco router, in place, and SIP trunk it back into your existing SIP provider, whoever you've got. That's one way of doing it. Or you can actually choose to purchase Webex calling through CommuniCloud, but use one of our global providers that provide PSTN services, and they have interconnects with Webex calling in the back end. So you don't need a local gateway or a cube. You literally take everything from the cloud. You can purchase your Webex calling subscription from CommuniCloud. They can do the professional services and help you with the deployment. And at the same time, you can connect it with OneStream, MyNet Phone, or Tata Communications. And Stephen will share a little bit more about OneStream's capabilities as well. So there's flexibility and choice of how you want to connect with an existing, a new, or one of our other cloud connected PSTN providers. Now, it's the last slide, and then I'll go into, I'll quickly hand over to Stephen, and then I'll go into demo mode. We understand that some of the smaller customers might be able to make an overnight change and move from on-prem to deployment, but very often if you have large investments or you've got different entities across the business, or you need some on-prem solution, to a certain degree, or you're sweating out assets, it might be a migration scenario that might take half a year or up to a few years. What we can do with Webex Calling in the Control Hub is actually connect either Cisco Communications Manager through the local gateway to the Control Hub and have a hybrid environment where you run Webex Calling to new sites, and you run Communications Manager to some of the existing sites that take a bit of time to migrate out. You can even connect a Mitel PBX or a Skype for Business PBX or whatever on-prem legacy investment you have. You can connect them to the Control Hub through your local gateway, the Cisco Cube. We can then centralize the dial plans across those legacy devices and technologies and vendors. And we can apply even PSTN services, auto attendance, hunt groups, voicemails, reception console from a central point. So you actually deliver a consistent and single pane of glass experience to the IT organization. You can also deliver a unified experience to the end user by delivering the Webex app to them, even though some of the call control might still happen on a Mitel PBX, for example. So we're really flexible in how we can help you transition to the cloud. With that, I'd like to hand over to Stephen just to go through the OneStream proposition, and then we'll go into the demo mode. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you. So before I actually go into the OneStream piece, it probably makes a little bit of sense to give you an introduction as to why we would go and some of the thought process we had behind this. So when we were picking partners for the PSTN connectivity side of it, we had to kind of match what our existing customer footprint is today. So we're not just obviously based here in Australia. We also have a few offices throughout Asia Pacific, and customers, quite a few customers through Asia Pacific, but also an office in the UK and customers over there as well. So when we were looking for providers, we were looking for a provider that could actually service all of these countries, but also a lot of their remote or satellite offices, things like in South Africa or in North America or that side of it. So when we were obviously picking these things, it obviously made sense. OneStream's messaging was there for the fact that they cover services in over 200 countries, and where CCP or that native integration into Cisco's data centers is not available, they can actually provide the global SIP services, which we sell and we have sold for a while now, into those locations with a local gateway. So some of the benefits that we get out of that, and what probably differentiates us to going with some of the say telcos that are based in Australia, is that we can offer a global service. So rather than just providing services in Australia and saying, okay, we'll provide you a gateway, but you have to provide your own local legs in whatever country it is, we can actually provide that and wrap it as part of the same solution and support it end to end. Some of the indirect benefits of that, which people kind of maybe miss or don't really attribute to it, is that we can give you a single bill globally. So if you've got offices based in the US or Europe or Asia Pacific, it's a single communications bill, which means, and it's also in the single currency. So you actually have predictability in the costs of your business, and you can actually plan and prepare that over time without having to suffer all of the exchange rate changes and anything else that's happening, obviously, in global politics at the time. So on the back of that, we also looked at what the services they can actually provide. So Maarten, if you want to just move over, excellent. So the backbone infrastructure that they have, and this is one of the primary reasons that we like this as well, is that they do have a fully redundant global core with geo-redundancy. So as Maarten says, is in each of the Cisco data centers, they have dual redundancy services going into those for local failover, but in their backbone network for the global reach, they have 6 core distributed data centers in 3 pairs. So as you can see there, we've got Los Angeles and New York for the Americas, London and Frankfurt for Europe and the Middle East, and Hong Kong and Sydney for Asia Pacific. Now, each one of those can actually fail over to each other and also between the pairs geographically, which gives a 5 nines global availability, which is not really there for a lot of the local providers. If you go to the next one. Excellent. Coverage here, as you can see, is a whole heap of countries. Obviously, these are not all just CCP, but it is areas where if you have remote offices or you have a location there, we can deliver services in via either a local gateway or an integration direct to an on-prem PBX, like Maarten mentioned before, or we can provide CCP into quite a few of those areas as well, where it's actually natively terminated into the Cisco data centers. Next slide. So it's probably best now is to unleash our wonderful offer that we've brought together with Cisco at the moment. So until pretty much the end of April, we are offering free migration services. So the professional services, the project management involved in migrating you from your traditional solution or whatever service you have now to the Webex platform will be free of charge in this event. That also includes pretty much all of the online configuration if we need to map a lot of your complex workflows through, and a lot of the integration work. So if you want to integrate into Office 365 or onto Google, like Maarten was mentioned before, that's included in those services as well. So we'll follow up on this meeting at the end of it with anyone who is interested, but also please feel free to share, obviously, this video, which we'll be making available at the end of the service. So I'll probably hand over to Maarten now to cover some of the demos.
Cool. Thanks for that, Stephen. That's a great offer, by the way. That's a real value add. Yep, so I'll go into my demo mode now. And the first thing I'll do is actually just show you the Webex app, just how Webex calling is part of the Webex app. And there's a whole bunch of other things in there that Webex can do. And it's obviously a team collaboration tool that does meetings, messaging, file sharing, and so forth. I'm going to focus on Webex calling today, but just bear in mind, this is a great, if you're not married and fully down the path of Microsoft or Slack, then absolutely Webex is a great solution to help your staff and employees collaborate together internally and externally. So as you can see here, I think the layout's fairly similar to some of the other apps as well. You've got your little toolbars there, which is messaging, Teams, and we've got some contacts and calling and voicemail and meetings. Here you can actually see the spaces that I've got, and spaces or channels, however you want to call them. We call them spaces. There's direct spaces with people, and they could be in my company, they could be outside my company. You see actually that they give you present status. Someone's on video here. Someone's in a calendar meeting, he's idle on the computer, he's on a call. So it gives you straight away, the present status. In this case, there's spaces with, obviously teams and multiple people. There's small spaces. This is a space for our collaboration flex plan, which is our consumption model, which I might just cover that later as well. And you can see there's 1,900 people in that space. So this is an internal space, and we communicate with all the specialists internally. There's a lot of content that's being shared. You can normally schedule as well, not for like a meeting, for example. You cannot share a meeting for more than 200 people. So if I would take, this one here that we've got, I can actually start scheduling a meeting, and it's fully integrated with Exchange and Outlook as well. Okay, and that will then allow you to, within the app, do meetings, but also integrate it with your video devices. I've disconnected myself from my video device because I actually need to be able to demo some calls that I'm making as well. Okay. I'm not going to go into further details around the messaging, but it's a great tool. And again, it fully integrates with some of our the other vendors that have desktop document sharing technologies. Okay, let's have a look at my buddy list. I can add a buddy list, and you can create that completely, tailor it completely to how you want. It's fully integrated with your desktop, but also with your Active Directory. In my case, I'm looking at it as a soft client to make phone calls. It's connected, as you can see here, to our call control platform, and you can see the history of all the calls that I've made in the past weeks, I'd say. It's connected it's actually functioning as my computer. So it's a soft phone on my computer. If I want to connect to a video device, I can, or to a physical phone. and then you actually would control the video unit or the phone, and then calls that are coming in can be taken on that specific phone with a headset, or if the video unit can dial the PSTN, it has a subscription for it, and it can then also be a really fancy phone. And especially if you think about boardrooms or meeting rooms, if you walk in and you want to call someone, but you don't want to do it on the computer, you want to use the existing device that's in that room, you just sit down, they automatically pair with each other. It's proximity pairing. You hit this button here and it then links to your soft client and you can make a call to that person. All right, so it's really nice how Cisco can integrate between soft clients, the app, on a mobile, on a desktop, but also the physical devices in rooms or on desks as well, which is what others tend to not do because they are not part of the vendor solution. So I can make any kind of call here using the dial pad or just people in a directory. Let me just defer that one now. You can see voicemail. This is actually my wife. I made a call earlier this morning. She works for Cisco as well. There's a visual voicemail. You can delete it, or you can listen to it, or you can obviously play it here and so forth. So that's visual voicemail. There's a meetings tab as well. If you've got the ability to do meetings, you can start an instant meeting. You can join someone's meeting, and this is your personal meeting room. You can instantly join or kick off, or you can schedule a meeting. So these are really the workloads that I was talking about earlier. There's calling, there's with voicemail, there's meetings, and there's messaging. If you don't want a specific workload because you use a different vendor for that, whether it's Slack or it's Microsoft or it's Zoom, you can then in your administration portal turn that specific meeting or that specific workload off, and then that will be taken out. And the default, for example, instead of having messaging here, would be calling if that's important to you, and it's really a soft phone solution. Now, going into Microsoft, this is my demo account. I'm Keith here, Keith Kaki. That's my demo account that I've got, as you can see here. And this is really simple. So the only thing we actually do is going into the Microsoft Teams App Store. You search up Webex Calling. It will provide you an app that you can then click on and install, and it provides you then with a tab here, which is the Webex Calling tab. Okay, that Webex Calling tab allows you to make calls. You can do speed dials. You can add any kind of person there. You can search for people. Let's search for David here, for example, and then we'll just consult your Active Directory or anything in your Outlooks, and then you can add those people or you can call those people. Okay. In my case, I'd like to make a phone call, and it's a demo environment, so I actually have to type in +6. But normally you can type in, obviously, in a normal production environment, you can just type in 04. This is my own number. If I hit the call button, it will pop up in a minute. There you go, there's your call window. And you can see that I'm calling myself. Now, if I answer that call, I put it on mute so it doesn't echo, and then you get all your hold, park, transfer, conference, all those solutions. So if you want to transfer, you can transfer the call to anyone within your contacts list or your Active Directory. So all your mid-call features, they're all there, whether it's hold, park, transfer, conference, and so forth. All right, so that's just making a call. It just launches. It still launches the Webex application. You still need to run it because that's ultimately, obviously the technology that will make the call, but it cross launches here from Microsoft Teams and will only open up that calling window. Okay, so that's how it works. And we do this because we have Microsoft opened up their APIs to any kind of vendor, and therefore we're able to integrate fully with their Microsoft Teams client. The next one on the roadmap is voicemail. So you'll have a voicemail button here as well. And the other one that we're working on is presence status. That means that if you're on a call using the Webex calling technology, Microsoft will actually tell you in Teams that you're actually on a call off hook as well, which is great because that's what people want. Now, you've got the tab here. You can use the dial pad. You can use, obviously, the directory. There's another way of calling people within the organization. It's directly from a chat. Let's say David is here. automatically will also put a little button in there, and you can call him on his mobile, on his desk phone, or as a SIP call. Okay. Now, the last thing to mention here is we decided in this demo environment to leave the Microsoft calling buttons in there. This is a video call within Teams. This is just a normal audio call within Teams. You as an administration or IT can decide to either leave it in or turn it off. It might be confusing if they have multiple calling options, but you know, if people understand that workflow, that they can make internal calls within Teams, or they can make external calls with Webex as the PBX. It's always the same, isn't it? So they've got an option there to either leave it in or take it out. A lot of our customers take it out, and they just purely use Webex Calling as the calling engine in Teams. Okay. Now, that was Webex as an app. It was also click-to-calling from Microsoft Teams. The last thing that I wanted to show you is the Webex Control Hub. And again, coming back to my presentation, I think this is one key differentiator that we've got against some of our competitors. First of all, because it's a very powerful, you know, single pane of glass control hub that allows you to manage everything. But just the fact that every single thing that is part of your collaboration solution can be managed from this platform. You know, all the different workloads, whether it's messaging, file sharing, your data loss prevention policies, your integrations with third-party vendors, but also, you know, if you have meetings, then meetings is in there as well. If you have devices, they're in here. Third-party integrations, like I said, with Google or Microsoft are there, Active Directory and Exchange for scheduling, for example, for video endpoints. Everything is being done here. But also the technology that BroadSoft has developed over the last 20 years, like really robust and feature-rich auto attendance, call queues, you know, virtual extensions, for example, Office Anywhere, you name them, they're all there. Now, let me just start quickly with analytics. Okay, and it'll take a little while to load here because it just pulls it up. This is, by the way, you can do analytics real time as well for meetings, for messaging, for your devices, but definitely also for calling. The one that I'm interested here is for calling. So I'm going to go into quality. I'll look at it from a monthly perspective, and this is a demo environment. Okay, so we don't make too many calls, and we've been a bit quiet here, but you can literally see all the calls that have been made in the past or real time. You can start analyzing the quality of calls. You know, what minimum packet loss do you want to filter on, the latency, the jitter, and you can quickly identify if a person has had a really poor experience, or you are proactively looking as an administrator of what calls quality is actually doing. You can quickly determine, you know, what is that specific user on? Is it a multi-platform phone, one of our Cisco phones? Is it the Windows desktop app? Is it the mobile app? Is it an iOS app, for example? What's the package loss? What's the jitter? And then you can start filtering down. This is not acceptable. It needs to be lower than 112, whatever. And it starts obviously filtering on that as well. So this is really useful, especially for people during COVID, working from home, that have poor internet connectivity, that might be far away from the modem. Whatever it is, troubleshoot and help them actually improve and fix that experience. The last thing you want is that people have a poor calling experience, let alone meeting experience is obviously consuming a lot more, but the calling experience, that's degrading because, you know, kids are streaming Netflix or whatever it is, or whatever. That's not a good thing. So you can troubleshoot within the Control Hub. If we then look quickly at the dashboard, this is how you normally would, you know, open up the Control Hub. You can see that all the services that Webex has are online and are humming away. It's all good. You can see your organizational health, the things that you've done, that you've actioned, have you installed things, have you configured things. You can see your devices that are online or offline, onboarding of users. You can also have hybrid services, calendar integration with Microsoft or Google, and some other integrations that we facilitate as well. Now, if we go into users, Here you can actually manage all your staff and your users. I'm just going to let this load. If you want to add new users, we normally work with directory synchronization into Active Directory or Azure, Office 365. It's not turned on for us in this demo environment, but it's really easy to turn on. The flick of the switch, a couple of steps, and you're through it. You can add manually people to it, or you can claim users that have been using the Webex app for free before you start paying for a subscription, for example. You can do batch uploads as well. Okay, so that's fairly easy to do. Now, in my case, I'd like to manage Keith Kaki, which is myself. I'm active. If I double click on my persona, I can actually see here what kind of workloads are available to Keith. I've got Teams, Webex, which is the messaging and file sharing capabilities. If I untick that box, then that workload will disappear. And you can do the same for meetings. You know, if you potentially use Zoom or Microsoft that, you can turn that off as well. And calling, there's enterprise, there's basic. We've got a new subscription model that has slightly different options there as well, because we're always trying to improve that and give the best coverage from a requirements perspective. But yeah, you can really look at those different workloads and turn things off or make specific things available to the end user or not. If we then look at additional, you can see that there's a Cisco phone assigned to Keith. If we look at some of the additional calling features, let's just have a quick look at, no, it's going to use the user calling, advanced calling. And you can see that things like hoteling or hot desking are available to users as well. They can log into any kind of phone and pull up their extension. We've got receptionist clients that can be aligned to a specific person, executive assistant. If you're a lawyer and you're an assistant and the assistant has multiple lawyers, for example, that she manages, or the boss switch, that's available as well. So there's a whole bunch of features that are very, very feature rich that are available. Call recording. We have a third-party vendor that's a Solutions Plus provider called Dubber. They're on our price list. You can also be part of this. You can activate it here. That does call recording for compliance, especially in the FSI industry. Very feature-rich platform, as you can see. Now, if we look at Workspaces, Workspaces could be meeting rooms, it could be kitchens, it could be lobbies, it could be anything that is actually a space. You can create a new workspace and start deploying a video unit there, or a phone, for example. You can give it a name, boardroom. What type is it? It is a meeting room. And then you can even give it a capacity. If it's not allowed to have more than 8 people because of COVID, you can change this. And then if more people walk into that room, and our video devices can actually count people, they can actually tell you you've now exceeded the capacity against COVID regulations. You know, maybe some people need to leave. So you can really tailor it that way. You can either then add a video device, or you can add a phone. In my case, let's add a phone to that specific boardroom. I'll take this phone. And this is the beauty of how quickly you can actually deploy these technologies. You can put the MAC address of that specific phone in the control hub. And when you ship it over to that boardroom, you know, if it's a different office and they plug it in, automatically it will connect to the control hub and the service. It will have its extension number and will have all the services that are available to that phone. You can either do it per phone, you can do a batch upload for all phones in the organization, or you can even migrate your existing communications manager data and extension numbers and profiles. You can actually import them into the control hub and get a really easy migration from an existing Cisco deployment on-prem to the cloud. So it's a really easy way. The same for video endpoints. You can provide a MAC address, put it in there, and automatically it will fire up. Or you can actually give people a code. They type in the code. When the video unit fires up and it's connected, it gets a SIP address, and it can call anyone in the world. So just the simplicity of deploying phones, deploying headsets, deploying video units to end users, but also to workplaces or spaces, is a really simple way of doing. Here you can actually see all the video devices that are controlled from the Control Hub. There's large video systems, there's smaller desktop units here. This is the one that I'm actually using myself very often here in my house. I've got phones and we've got headsets being managed from this platform as well. Okay. If you want to add devices, it's the same kind of experience as Workplaces, but then instead of going into a workplace and then a device, it's more adding a device initially. Messaging, here you can manage all the messaging, what sort of messages can be shared, what sort of files can be shared. We've got a technology called Gridlock, which you can apply here as well for data loss prevention. You can really set the parameters of what you are allowing users to share or share in spaces with external participants in those spaces as well. Meetings can be managed here, and calling. Now, this is the last thing, and we're nearly done. This is really where you manage your calling platform. So I've shown you, obviously, the devices. I've shown you the users. I've shown you some of the other workloads like meetings and messaging. This is calling. Here you can see all the numbers that are assigned, or number blocks that are assigned to my company or my subscription here. In this case, we can add number blocks here that are available from the cloud connected PSTN provider or your existing SIP provider through that cube. You can configure your cube here as well. You can put a cube in place, a Cisco local gateway that can SIP trunk into your existing service providers. If you want to add a location, you can do that here, and then you can start adding the local cube as well. If you think about the Bondi office here, for example, I think the Bondi office is actually configured with a local gateway. Let me see, it's probably popping up here. Yep, so as you can see here, the PSTN connection of the Bondi office is premise-based. It's got a cube, and you can literally hit the button here, and then you can completely configure the local gateway or Cisco cube and the SIP trunks that are going into Telstra or whoever it is. Yeah. In this case, the other offices are all cloud connected, which is a lot easier because you don't need physical hardware. It just connects directly into, in this case, MNF, MyNet phones, Cloud PSTN, which is interconnected in the backend with the Cisco Webex Calling platform. Okay, let's have a look at features. And again, I think this is one of the key differentiators that we've got from some of our competitors. We've got 20 years of development going into this platform, and all these features are free. They're available at no cost. We've got auto attendance, call pickups, call queues, hunt groups, paging groups, receptionists, virtual extensions. If your own customers are important to you and you want to give them an internal extension, you can literally put their full contact details and phone numbers in there, and it could be a 3 or 4 digit extension. We've got Office Anywhere, which means that if someone rings your desk phone, all your phones ring, your mobile phone as well. We've got mobile, fixed mobile handover. We do a great job there in taking calls from the mobile to the extension and vice versa between physical phones, IP phones, and mobile phones if you want to hand over. So that's all here. Now, let's quickly look at how do you set up an auto attendance. Let's take Bondi, for example. Searching for Bondi office. I don't have a phone number available at the moment because we've given them all out internally. But let's just say an internal extension is given to that one. The language is Australia, and I'm just going to give it my own name. There we go. And I still need to give it a test name, the auto attendant, and that's done. As you can see, there's only a few steps that you need to go through. Is it standard business hours? Yep. Is it standard holiday hours? Yep. You can change these and modify them completely to that specific auto attendant. You can then have, obviously, for the auto attendant, different menus, dial 1 for this, dial 2 for that, and then the extensions that they go to, the numbers. In this case, I'm going to, in the interest of time, going to move ahead. Default greeting, or you can customize your greeting. You can either attach a WAV file that you've previously recorded, or you can record a one here. In this case, default greeting, you move on. There's a quick summary there, and you've got your auto attendant created. It's that simple, right? And if you can imagine that if you've got different PBXs that you need to sweat out, you've got Mitel, you've got potentially Avaya or Alcatel. If people in different sites need to manage all these different auto attendants and call queues and everything, that's quite a bit of a hassle. If you can start centralizing all those services from here, from the control hub, and applying them to all those PBXs, you can imagine that you're sort of aggregating all that simplicity towards one single pane of glass. It's the consistent experience, and it's really quick. And at the same time, you can consolidate all the dial plans across all those devices as well, and slowly migrate to the cloud. I'm not going to go into further details. I think we've got only about 7 minutes left, so I'd like to stop there. I mean, I can show so many more things, but I think it's probably worth stopping here and actually opening it up to the floor and actually see if there's any questions. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to any attendee, and see if there's any questions.
Hi, we've actually run a little bit over time, so I'll just do one question quickly. How can customers purchase the technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. Historically, Cisco used to sell perpetual licenses, and you would buy software support on that either annually or for a few years. We've moved away from that quite a few years ago, and it's all around subscriptions, similar to the Webex meetings portfolio. We've got a collaboration flex plan, as we call it. It's flexible because you can mix and match technologies. You can decide how you deploy the technology, whether it's on-prem, hybrid, or from the cloud. So mix and matching different technologies, workloads, but also deciding how to deploy them. And it's just based on a subscription. You have either a named user, you just purchase the amount of named users that you need for your staff, or there's an enterprise agreement model as well. It really gives you an additional bunch of benefits if that's a more cost-effective way of doing it. And you can then do it for a year or 3 years or 5 years, and you can either extend it afterwards, or you can move somewhere else if that's the preference. So that's really an easy and flexible way of consuming the technology, and also growing as you go, because you can change within the flex plan if the consumption model is more cost-effective with a different plan. Hope that explains.
Great, thank you. We'll wrap up there. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We hope you found the webinar valuable and interesting today, and we will be sending out the recording shortly, so look out for that one. Please feel free to send any questions, or if you would like any further information, feel free to send those over to us as well. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.
Thank you. See you guys.